Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Town of Monroe Planning and Zoning Commission regular meeting for May the 1st, 2025. It is 7:04 p.m. If you'll please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hey, thank you. Hold on, I'll take. I'm going to call the roll, starting on my right.
Dominic Smaglino, alternate commissioner.
Dominic Panicia, alternate commissioner.
Brian Condon, Commissioner.
Bruno Maini, Commissioner.
Robert Westland, Commissioner.
Nicole Lupo, alternate commissioner.
Catherine Gallagher, Planning and Zoning Administrator.
And we will be seating tonight Nicole Lupo, I believe.
Yep.
Leon.
Well, Leon Ambrosi, he is not here. It brings us to general public participation. This portion of the meeting is for the public to discuss issues with the commissioners that are not on the agenda tonight. If you have any comments, things you'd like to bring to our attention that is not on the agenda tonight, this is the time to do it. Please raise your hand if you're here in the audience, or raise your hand if you're online. I don't see any. Oh, there's 4 people online. Come right up front, just state your name and address, and write your name, if you would, on the.
Chris, can you fix the microphone for her? Please. Thank you.
And please just address the commissioners.
Should I just start?
Well, name and address for all of us. Just state your name and address.
Lynn Nordi, I'm at 65 Camelot Drive in Monroe.
Thank you.
Been here forever, probably 45 years. And I had an interesting situation with a young man who had just gotten his license. And he was driving and I was in the passenger seat. And we, were going down 111 and we pulled into the area we were going to, and he said, "Do you mind if I share something with you?" Oh, let's go with it. He said, I was almost gonna pull over and not drive anymore due to the distractions of all the signage that is along as I'm driving. And I kind of looked around. You get used to it. We live here. And I look around, and I'm not talking about the signs that say there's, a carnival or the church is, having some event. I'm referring to all the signage that is advertising for places that sometimes have their big billboard right there. And I think it's a safety issue. I think that, not only is it a safety issue, it's not attractive. The entrance to the town should be attractive, it should be safe, it should be like a walkway into someplace. And I think that we're starting to look not what we used to look like, which was a town that took care of itself. Now he even mentioned the fact, he was laughing about the fact that our 2 liquor stores are having like an argument with size. Mine's bigger, yours is smaller. This is not the kind of thing that we really should be encouraging, in my opinion. So I just wanted to bring this to your attention with the hope that you could look into it a little further. I know you make a really big effort to try and remove these signs. I know you have somebody who goes out and does that. Is that the best use of our service, of our employees? Should we would we possibly make some sort of ruling that you can't put these things? I went down the street with somebody else on another day just to look. There were 28 signs. That's horrible. You can't even read them. And then you're asking somebody, as they're driving, to read the sign. Then the phone number is underneath it. So I can't imagine that somebody's now gonna take out a pen and start writing the phone number down. And if they are, that's a hazard. So this is what I'm bringing to you. It may not be the biggest problem that we have in the town or to you, but I think it would be something that even if I'm retired, I have time on my hands, if I could even donate my time to something that would be able to, we could sit down and play with this a little bit and find out, maybe educate the, I know you have to make rulings, so I'm not a lawyer. I just looked up something, if I could read it to you, and I don't even know if I'm correct about this, but I looked in the Connecticut information on roadways, and it says, in Connecticut, advertising signs are regulated to prevent obstruction of visibility, particularly along roadsides and intersections. Signs must not be placed in a manner that obstructs traffic or creates a hazard. Also, you also have the authority to regulate signage to ensure public safety and aesthetics. And that pretty much, if you have any questions for me, I'll be happy to answer them. I don't know if that's appropriate, but thank you.
Thank you for your opinions. Is there anyone else here tonight? Or is there anyone online that would like to address the commission?
If somebody is online, you have to either use the raise hand function, or if you're calling in *6.
Okay, I don't see any.
*9, sorry, *9. Upside down.
Do you have any
I don't see it.
comments on the sign issue?
Yes. It is an issue in town. Staff agrees, and I will tell you, the first selectman very much agrees. He is in our office on a regular basis asking us when we're going out. Thomas, who is our zoning enforcement officer, did go out on Wednesday, actually.
I spoke to him, he's wonderful.
Just this past Wednesday, he went out. They're not permitted signs. So this Planning and Zoning Commission has issued regulations. We do have zoning regulations. That's why he does go out and just pick them up, because they are illegal. They're not permitted signs, which is why he's the authority to just go and pluck them off the ground. That's not necessarily the case with political signs. We do permit political signs to be up during the political season, but as it relates to the signs that I believe that you were talking about, you are correct that there's not permitted. So he goes out on actually a fairly regular basis to do them, and we have a very large pile of them that we keep for a short period of time in case someone comes to us and says they want their signs back, but they just keep putting back up.
How do you feel about somebody?
If you're going to talk, you have to come up here.
Oh, I'm sorry. How do you feel about somebody going?
You still got to come up here first before you start talking.
Okay, I mean, does it make any sense for somebody to go in with your approval and say to the people who own these stores, you can't do this, it needs to stop? And I know Tom does a great job. I met him, spoke to him about this, and he suggested I come here. And just keep doing it over and over again, because they don't, there's no, I guess.
I'll tell you what we do is we take it in chunks. So feather signs, the really large feather signs, that was an extraordinary problem for a while. What he did is he inventoried every single business with a feather sign in town, sent them all the letters, made sure they understood the regulations, gave them a certain amount of time period to take them down. If they didn't, then he individually went out to every single business and did it. Now, new ones pop up. Starbucks is a new business. They just put some up, so now he's on top of them trying to get, those to come down. So he takes those. Our next round of signs from a priority perspective is actually like the flashing and the light up signs in the windows that you see at night that are extraordinarily problematic in town. Those are our next priority for, again, he has to inventory every single one. The commission has heard your concerns. Maybe that's round 3 is we take an inventory of all the businesses that are actually putting out the individual signs. We make a master list of those and then do what you said, go out and educate them. We are trying to take signs in big groupings because it's an extraordinary amount of time to inventory it, even the evening ones. they are going to have to go out now after 9 o'clock at night and go out and inventory all of them while it's, dark out. But that's an option for round 3, is to take an inventory of all those actual businesses, look up their addresses, and then try to figure out where they're at.
I just feel bad if somebody has an accident because of this. And it's very clear to me, when I saw 28 of them, I wasn't driving to count. I was in the passenger seat. I have it on my phone. They're not good pictures because we were driving,
Yeah.
but it's unbelievable.
And he's just a broken record. He just picks them,
I
and
know,
then
and
they
that's
back
why,
up, come back up.
unfortunately, they're just gonna keep playing this game.
Yeah.
Guys, and replacing them until, do they need permits? Well, it's not
No,
legal,
they
so
can't, no,
they should.
can't.
Okay.
It's in town right away property. I mean, there's some permits, there's some availability to do signage on your own property.
Yes.
But to your point, they need a permit for it, which they don't.
Okay.
From my recollection, though, things kind of relaxed a little bit during COVID, correct? Because we were trying to be business friendly and we are trying to make sure that everybody understood that this business is open and this one, we wanted to keep our businesses open. So to some degree, I think that's spilling over and now all of a sudden things are going back to normal. But what about calling the number on the sign?
That's the point. Yes, we should probably take an inventory, call them up, do those things. I think it's just a question of like, what is staff's priority? And if you guys want to make this a priority, we're happy to put that over some of the other things that we're working on. We're just, whatever the priorities of this commission are.
We could talk about that subcommittee on Monday also and
Yeah.
try to come up with a game
That's
plan.
what I don't know if it's appropriate again, but I offer myself as somebody who could be educated on what to say and what not to say. I was a sales rep in the medical field for many years. I think I can focus off. But I would never do it without the okay of you guys, because that's just the way it works. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to move on to public hearing portion of the agenda. First public hearing is
Oh,
continued.
I'm so sorry. Can I ask for a motion? Can we add to the agenda under new applications, subdivision, SUB 2025-02, file number 1279 for 709-733 Monroe Turnpike, which is the community center. I just want to give you guys a quick update that will be coming down the pike for the next meeting.
You want to add that to the agenda?
Yeah, I want to add it to the agenda under new applications.
Okay. We need a motion.
I'll make a motion to add that to the agenda.
Second?
Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, abstaining? Okay, motion passes. That
You.
agenda. Okay, you ready?
Yes.
All right. Like I said before, we're going to move to the public hearing portion of the agenda tonight with the first public hearing continued from 4/17/25. That's SCP 2025-01, file 1665, 1536, and 1564 Monroe Turnpike. Do we have any new exhibits?
Yes. Oh, no. Exhibit 26 is the corrected, updated fire marshal letter to change unsure to insure. Exhibit number 27 is the revised plans and bond estimate by J. Edwards Associates, document dated 4/29/25. Exhibit 28 is letters from neighbor Miss Jelly dated 4/30/2025. Exhibit number 29 is neighbor letter from Kelly Hingus Carano dated 4/30/2025. Exhibit 30 is a neighbor letter, Michelle Solstiak, dated April 30th, 2025. Sorry, I can't read some people's writing. Exhibit number 31 is the inland wetland approval. Exhibit number 32 is the draft drainage easement by Attorney Russo. Exhibit and the conservation easement. Exhibit 17 is the IWC subdivision referral letter dated October 29th, 2024. Oh, wait, I'm going backwards. Exhibit number 33 is the conservation easement that we talked about. Exhibit number 34 is the engineering comments by Town of Monroe engineer James DeMayo and the bond estimate dated May 1st, 2025. That came in today. Exhibit number 25 is the conventional subdivision map by J. Edwards Associates dated 5/1/2025. And that concludes the exhibit.
Thank you. And for the applicant?
Chairman, members of the commission, Chris Russo, Russo and Rizzi LLC, offices at 10 School Hill Road, Connecticut, here on behalf of the applicant. Chair Commissioners, we had basically wrapped our presentation at the last hearing. There were a couple items that were left regarding some of the engineering comments. Jason Edwards submitted a revised set of plans, a bond estimate. He should be online.
He is, and I gave him it's JEA, so I'm assuming that's J. Edwards Associates. So I gave him co-host capabilities, so he should be able to unmute himself, which sounds like he is, and share his screen.
Yeah, so Jason's just going to share his screen and run through some of those changes.
Hi, everyone. This is Jason Edwards, J. Edwards Associates, Engineers, Surveyors. Office is located at 227 Stepney Road. Can everybody hear and see my screen okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So as Chris said, there was just a few issues that we had discussed a couple of weeks ago that were left that I had indicated I would review with the town engineer and then bring to you before at this meeting and explain them. Those both related to, or the three that I'm going to show, related to the drainage on lots 3 and 4, which are located behind the residence on Cottage Street. I believe the Miss Jelly's house. She had concerns over the runoff and how it would impact her home. So we've relocated. Sorry about that. 1 second. Doesn't want to let me zoom in here. There it goes. Okay, so we relocated the footing drain outlet to be farther to the north, so it discharges well away from her property now. This is on lot 4. It comes out almost out to Downs Road. We've indicated a swale to be constructed. We did leave some flexibility in that because it will be part of the lot construction. We didn't want to stipulate that it be built as part of the subdivision. So we've got a note stating that the final location would be determined in the field in order to preserve trees. You didn't want to go and clear the woods just to put a swale in, and would be at the discretion of the town engineer at the time of the building permit for lots 3 and 4. I believe I discussed that at the last meeting as well, but that's where that's going to go along the south side of lot 4. And then on lot 3, there was a concern over the outlet of this drainage, and we've routed that to come down. The house is over here. Miss Jelly's house is here, so this will be routed down to Cottage Street, and that drainage all flows this direction to the right. There was also the requested waivers of the subdivision regulations. The town engineer had, we had asked for the road to be narrowed to 28 feet, which he supported. And then we wanted to reduce the shelf on the box culvert, the shoulder, from 4 feet to 3.5 feet, I believe, but he did not support that. So we widened that out to meet the 4 feet requirement. And is there anything else I'm missing, Chris, or was that pretty much cover it?
I think that's it on your end. So yeah, we'd be withdrawing the request from going 4 to 3.5, but he did support James supported the going down to 28 feet. So I think that's it on your end. As I think Kathleen noted, I submitted the drainage easement and conservation easement, updated the conservation easement with language regarding the fire pond. I did review some of the comments. There were some comments that had been submitted before the hearing last time. There were some regarding vernal pools. Again, it was an issue we spoke about at the beginning. And what I'll point to, I submitted the inland wetlands approval for the record. And because the inland wetlands approval notes, it says the commission during its review noted the following, that multiple environmental reports have been considered in order to document the absence of vernal pools. So, you know, again, during that inland wetlands process, we had our 2 experts who testified that there's no vernal pools on site. And then there was also Dr. Clemens who reviewed that. And initially there was a question, but during the course of the hearings, that I remember him saying that he was satisfied with what we had presented with regards to vernal pools. The other comment as well, during the last hearing, there was a comment regarding stone walls. So there is no state law actually regarding stone walls. Stone walls can sometimes be brought in to regulations if there's a scenic road, sometimes historic districts. It wouldn't apply to this site, but my client did go out and look. The area, there's a stone wall that's in an area that's actually were proposed to be protected. And then there's another area of stone walls that is actually on the state property. So we went and took a look at that. But other than that, I think that concludes. Chair, at rebuttal, I'd like to just run through the special permit conditions. But then obviously if you have any other questions, we'd be happy to answer them at this point.
Okay, we'll go start with the commissioners on my right. Any questions?
No questions, thank you.
No questions, thank you.
No question.
So I know last time we spoke, again, I'm still torn on the whole sidewalk thing. I know there are some areas that do allow you to put some in. And then there's some areas that are a little bit a lot difficult. Did you guys discuss that at all?
Well, the issue, we discussed what would be involved in, all that would be involved in making that crossing. And we would have to have extensive conversations with DOT because we would have to extend their pipe, construct a head wall. We think there's about, I think it's 2,000 square feet of wetlands. 3,200 square feet, sorry, of wetlands that would have to be filled. And then one of the biggest issues too is where to divert the water during construction. Because we have that situation further up for when we're doing construction on the road, but we have the ability there to be able to divert it. But where that would be it was really tricky to be able to do. And it's something where it would take a significant amount of time to determine how much that cost would be, to understand what the cost would be on that. So and then it would have to go, not only would it'd have to definitely go back to wetlands, but it would have to certainly go to DOT to even see if they would accept what we were proposing for the pipe. It just does not seem, to me, if sidewalks were going to be implemented in this area, there would probably have to be a conversation between the property owners in that area, the town and the state about how you would approach putting in sidewalks, whether it would switch from one side to another at certain points, there would be crosswalks, things like that. But that wetland is basically smack dab in the middle where we would be running sidewalks for this problem. It's a significant challenge for I think this development.
In each one of these houses, it's running on well water or public or city water?
These are well to today's standards. Constructed to today's standards.
And you guys feel you get sufficient enough water, you'll have significant.
Evening, Commissioner, members of the Planning and Zoning Commission. Michael Chesnowski, Jan's Land Development applicant. With the wells, we put a lot of them in town. Recently at Whitetail Drive, that's the last subdivision that was done in town, and I did it. And we had 10 lots, okay? And the way the health department works, there's sufficient distance between the wells. Okay, and we're going down 250 feet or maybe more. to reach a good well. And there's no depletion on anybody's well. It's just in that area or the area above that upgrade, which is some of the opposition here thinks that we're going to affect the wells of their hand dug wells. Most of them back in the 30s and 40s. That's when Downs Road was built as a recreation area for Lake Zor. So a lot of it is all dug wells, and they only go down 20 feet or so. But we're down, the wells in our area, we're below 30 foot of elevation, and we're down into the ledge. We don't go down, we have to go into the ledge. That's where the water is. And so it doesn't really have any effect on anybody uphill of that situation.
I would assume as a person that never done a well or even had a well in his life,
Right.
would assume that anything above is flowing down. And I don't know how something below could affect on top, but again, I'm far from an expert on that.
The health department is very, tough on that situation there. We have to be 75 feet to 100 feet between wells or septic systems, and that's what's planned. So in terms of Miss Jelly's here, if she has a well, our septic systems are further away, more than 100 feet. Our wells are about 100 feet or better away from that, proposed wells. So not just, but it's all health department, state laws, state codes and everything, and we do it properly. And we've done it all over town. And, there's many subdivisions that have all these wells. Look at on Turkey Roots, not Turkey Roots, Hammertown Road. What's that development that goes up the hill there?
Wild Horse.
Yes. How many homes are there? There's 30, 40 homes, and there's wells on every house. Nobody's depleted, So it's very technical how they drill the wells. You can drill the wells, you won't get as much water unless, as if you were to pound the wells. And everybody knows that that fracks the ledge really well. So, I don't think anybody's going to suffer from this kind of thing,
Thank you.
especially hand dug wells.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's all I got.
No questions.
I have two questions. Did DOT do a traffic study where you're going to have the new driveway come out right across from Old Zor? Because that's already a pretty tedious intersection. Were there any traffic studies done for safety?
Traffic study, Jason, are you still?
Yeah, I'm still here. No, they wouldn't, there was no traffic studies done for this project. I know we did one for Stevenson Flex Park across the street a few years back, but DOT has the final say of that permit, so they'll review the safety of it prior to issuing the curb cut. We did review the location with them, and the location was at their direction. They wanted it opposite the Old Zor intersection. So it has been discussed with them, and we're going to have to meet their requirements before we can build anything.
We did a sightline survey.
Yeah, sightline's been measured. We meet all the requirements of the sightline and stopping distances, all that.
So would they then at that point, if they had a recommendation for a flashing light or something to alert people, because coming up, I always get this backwards. Hold on. Going southbound, which is going towards, going southbound, if you're trying to come out of Old Zor, man, you almost get T-boned every time. So my concern is just cars kind of going across there. So that would be DOT's job once you apply for the permit to come out and make sure that it's appropriate signage, make sure it's safe. If they feel a flashing light should be there, that would be them.
That's
Okay.
their discretion.
Okay.
And they won't look at it until there's approval at the local level, correct?
No, they'll consult just on the alignment, things like that, but they won't do a full review until they have an approved plan set to look at.
Okay. And second question, I just had triggered, what kind of blasting is going to be done down there? So
We
the
don't
well,
expect any.
getting through for the wells, it's just gonna be a regular drill.
So it would be a drill or a pounder.
Okay,
Wells get pounded.
They're pounded.
okay. All right. Thank you. No other questions.
There's approximately, excuse me.
You gotta come up.
Learning. You're learning.
Thanks.
You're a good student.
We've done 32 test holes in their septic systems area, and we did not hit any ledge. We got down as far as 10 feet. I talked to Jody Tuttle from Tuttle's Well Drilling. A lot of that area there's probably 20 to 30 feet to ledge.
Okay.
So, we're not gonna blast it, none whatsoever.
Thank you. No other questions.
Okay. Anything from staff?
Town engineer James DeMayo is not on tonight, but he had a chance to preliminary review the submission, and he and I discussed, he has a couple really small outstanding comments, but he's fine with them all being conditions of the approval. The applicant is asking for the one waiver that they discussed, which was reducing the width of the street from 32 to 28. The other two items are not there, although I know that they did update it. I don't know if James had a chance to do a full review, so we would still just make that a condition of approval, that it would just have to be up to date with that. I do have one more exhibit. I'm so sorry that I missed, which was 36. It was behind something, which is the Engstrom neighbor letter. So I do want to make sure that that's in the record. All my outstanding comments have been addressed. And once we go to deliberations, this commission does have draft approvals in front of you that we can discuss at that time.
All right, then we'll go to the public.
Actually, can I just say one more?
Hold on a second.
I apologize.
Commissioner, question?
Chris? Hey, bud. I'm just throwing this out there, and obviously it's, if the engineer's okay with it, obviously, who am I? But with the reduction in your driveway surface there, it's still okay for EMS and fire and all that stuff that's still, James feels it's enough to get everything in, out.
Yes, to the point where we've thought about changing our regulations because,
No, which is,
James, there's a lot to change.
yeah.
no, there's also a thought that, the more asphalt you pour, the more surface you're bothering and all that kind of stuff. So the less,
Yeah.
most of the times is better, but I just.
It's a cul-de-sac. Yes, and EMS, fire, and police have all reviewed this application.
Perfect. I just wanted to make sure.
I think 32 feet's there's widest times. Sorry. Oh, tap. 100-foot radius, yeah, that's appropriate radius.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure, just for the,
Absolutely.
I'm assuming if an engineer knows, I'm surely not one.
All right, then we will proceed to the public hearing portion of the agenda for this hearing. Let me remind you, raise your hand to be recognized online, press the raise my hand button. We'll select who's to come up, name and address. Please write your name and address and let us know orally. Also, try to limit your discussions to 3 minutes. So is there anyone here tonight that would like to address the commission? And also just address the commission, not the applicant. Come right up.
Low.
My name is Samantha Vera. I live at 5 Sunrise Terrace. I have a lot of questions. So that's mainly what I have tonight, that questions I feel like I still don't know the answer to. I'd also like to point out that assurances from the developer that our wells are not going to be affected just isn't enough for the neighborhood. And there's a lot of people that are against the project. You may have seen all of the letters. But a lot of people have conflicts on Thursday night, so I don't want you to think that it's just us that come, that feel the way that we feel. So, in regard to the hand dug wells, I don't know a lot about wells. It's not my area. I'm a teacher by education. My well is underneath my paved driveway. That's what we're dealing with at my house. So, things weren't done exactly correctly. My house was built in the 50s. So when we were looking for our well, we found it under the driveway. So there's literally an area of dirt with pavement that they then have to dig down into the well. I mean, it's madness. As with a lot of older homes, a lot of things weren't done correctly. We have learned, in purchasing our home. So my question is, who do we talk to about our concerns about wells? I asked the same thing at inland wetlands. Who do we talk to about the wildlife? Who do we talk to about the wells? And it seemed like both of those questions come to you at planning and zoning. So, I don't know, I'm not a hydrologist, I'm not an engineer. If somebody like James DeMayo, who's an engineer, could come and tell the people who live in this area, you don't need to worry, or just something, like, internet research for me, this is just so frustrating. It's so frustrating because I'm sorry, and it's no offense to the developer, but I don't trust what they say. They have one goal in mind, and that's making money off of this land. Whereas the rest of us are living there. We pay Monroe taxes. We are the ones who will suffer the consequences of this project. We moved to that area of town because of its sort of remoteness, and that things are changing, and it's hard. It's hard to accept. And it's not like we haven't asked time and time again from the different commissions, who do we go to for help? Who tells us? Do we have to go to the state? Do we have to go to DEEP? I don't know, and I don't seem to get an answer. So I would feel a lot better if somebody could say, and not from a legal standpoint, but just, hey, you're up on those hills, you're not going to be affected. I would feel better. Because a lot of the people who are down the bottom of Downs Road, they run out of water sometimes. If we have a dry summer, some people don't run their washing machines, like they normally do because they don't have enough replenished water. So to me, as a lay person, if you build 8 large homes in an area, aren't you draining water to meet the needs of those homes? Aren't you taking it away from the surrounding area? I don't understand it enough. I would just like an answer. I would just like something to say, don't worry about your water, let alone all of our concerns about the wildlife, et cetera. But at the end of the day, I mean, water is a big thing. Our drink, we don't have a chance to have city water and city sewage. And if we did, I don't think this would be as big of a deal as it has been for all of the neighbors. I mean, we've been on this crusade, it feels like, since the beginning, obviously, of this application. So this is, uncertain times and everything. Like we don't have the money to hire, lawyers who can fight this, or we can't hire, hydrologists or geologists or whoever it is. Like we don't have that money to do that. So we need, I don't know if it's this commission, but we need somebody on our side. We need someone to help us, someone to give us guidance. I have a lot more questions, but that's my main concern. You already answered about blasting. I would just like to say about the sidewalks, that was one hopeful thing I had about this project was the idea about sidewalks, because the area is notoriously not walkable. I'm hoping that one day, maybe through a grant or something, we can maybe turn the railroad into like a rails to trails for this side of town as opposed to this side or that side of town. And just sidewalks on that road would be great. I know a lot of people who walk down to, Dunkin' Donuts and in the gas station or whatever to get supplies. And I thought, oh, wow, okay, we have something good coming out of this. And now we're hearing, nah, we'd have to go back to wetlands. It's gonna, it's gonna be too expensive or whatever the case may be. It's just so disappointing. It's just really disappointing. Oh, the stone walls. I thought that was in the subdivision regulations, if I'm correct, that you have to have stone walls mapped out as part of your application. Maybe I'm wrong, but I thought I read that somewhere, but my mind is all jumbled with info. So I get off my proverbial soapbox and thank you so much for listening.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else here tonight that would like to address the commission? Please state your name and address for the record.
237 Cottage Street. Some things I agree with Samantha. It's really difficult when we're the people living there. We're the ones most impacted. Everybody else is the town who has to look out for us not getting sued or whatever else, what brings in tax revenue. And the developer and all of his team want to make money on our side of town, which is cool. I get it. But we're the ones impacted most and we feel like we get listened to the least, which is really sad. When I hear things like they're going to do pounding for these wells, not drilling. First thing I look up on my phone says it's a major habitat disturbance. Pounding versus drilling is shallower and less expensive. Cushion drilling tends to pound the area, whereas bored wells have less disruption. Things like this are brand new to us. We've had no time to send you guys anything for it because it's the first we're hearing about it. And I understand things go in stages, but we constantly feel like we're chasing a fire. And it's really hard. Having somebody who says, well, I don't think, this is literally what was said, I don't think anybody over there is going to have water issues. I have yet, between Monroe and Wetland here, though I haven't been to every meeting admitted, I have never seen something where they've done a study that showed how many gallons, like it hasn't been like anything I've heard of, and it's not that it hasn't been done. I haven't seen or heard of any water studies being done. I've been there at least 7 years. This July, my wells run out twice in those 2 dry years we've had. I have a drilled well that is 150 feet deep. I ran out of water. I have 3 people in my house. We all work, and 2 of them are my adult children. It's not like I have people home during the day flushing toilets, running showers. It's crazy. I do not have one of the Ando wells, and I still run out. And that's with my rain barrels. I don't use it to, water my garden. I use my rain barrels and these water troughs I have. It makes me very sad and angry to not know for sure. Like Samantha said, has there been a study to show? And I understand somebody thinks we won't be impacted. Unless we know how those aquifers run, nobody's going to know for sure until it's done and those houses are in. And then there's no recourse for me. Now what happens? I have to go and spend $10,000, $20,000 to re-drill my well? That's not fair. We're supposed to be protected too. And I don't feel that enough attention is put on making sure that the residents in that area who have valid statements and concerns, who've provided here as well as in the wetlands, valid resources that we could find online to substantiate our concerns, were not properly addressed. Everything is, we just have to find a way to make this work. Well, that's great, but at what expense? I live here too. I was here before these 8 houses. And oh, we can't do the sidewalk because we've got 3,200 or whatever feet. Okay, fine, maybe you can't do it on the south side. Because yes, that has a crazy dip. It takes runoff. We're gonna disrupt even more, I agree. But when you actually go over there and you walk it like Paula did, and you walk it like I did, and you drive by it, the only part that dips down is when you come out of Old Zor and you go to cross where this would-be road would be. Immediately to the left, there is a dip there. It can't be more than 10 feet. And then all of a sudden it starts going with an upward grade as you go down towards 34. Even if we only had half the property, not the side that's being protected wetlands, fine, at least put it on the other side. The reality is those 8 families of people are not walking south to walk to the other Dunkin' Donuts or to walk to the castle at the top of the hill. They're probably going to the convenience stores, the liquor store, the gas station, 34, hiking trails. That's the side that's most important anyway. And to once again hear, oh, but the cost involved, and then it's got to go back to this department. I don't give a flying fig. This is human safety. This is not just somebody making money. I understand we all have the right to build. We all have the right to make money. But at what point does somebody else's, value of the comfort of living in their home that they bust their tail and I work 3 jobs for to pay my mortgage so that I can live here in a town I've been in since 1987. And I get the attitude that his pocket is more important than my comfort in my home, and that what I had, which is only running out of water twice during droughts, that it's not going to get worse. When is my being here going to count for something more than a new project and people that aren't here yet? And that doesn't even take into account, we've got the environment and the habitat getting disrupted. We've got the fact that Dr. Clemens stated in 2 different letters and in multiple meetings, why can't we do a span? It's the cost. Okay, great. Well, if somebody doesn't make as much money, but the rest of us of the environment are better protected, I'm sorry. At what point does the percentage then of that, then somebody can turn around and decide earlier on, this isn't the right project for me, I'm not gonna make the percentage I want on it, and they find somewhere else. They've admittedly done multiple projects in Monroe alone. They're not struggling to pay their mortgage. I'm not struggling, but I'm working 2 and 3 jobs to do it. I don't want my value of life and living or my children to go down because somebody wanted to make a buck, and the people that are sitting in front of me are the ones making that decision. That's really hard to have faith in a bunch of people I don't know. And you pray to God or whatever you believe in that they're listening to you at the end of the day, and they don't just go home and go, well, that was another long ass meeting, and make themselves a drink and move on. It's really hard. And that's sad. I've never, ever, in over 30 years, ever felt like our voice didn't matter, our quality of living didn't matter, and that the dollar came first. And that's what I feel like it's come down to.
Okay, thank you for your comments. And yes, come on forward.
My name is Paula Kelly. I live at 290 Cottage Street. 1564 surrounds me on 3 sides. And look what I found this afternoon. I didn't realize I've had this survey map of 1564. And look what's on them. Stone walls. The marking in red is where stone walls are. I have walked on Downs Road, and this property border here borders Deirdre, oh, I can't think of her last name, starts with a G. She owns 23 and 25 Downs Road. There's a stone wall along there, and she wasn't sure whether that belonged on her property or the 1564. But clearly this map shows that that stone wall is the property line. I have provided you the photographs in my packet of the stone walls that are on the corner of Downs Road and Cottage Street. And then I provided you photographs of the stone wall here, which is, my apologies. This is my house. And then I have about 30 feet of stone wall. And the majority of it is missing in front of my house. And I suspect it's missing because my house, built in between 1941 and 43, the foundation is made of stone. So probably used those stones, and this stone wall along the driveway is also stone. And when I spoke to the granddaughter of Elsie Downs, who used to own this property, you see Elsie Downs' name here. She owned this in 1975, and she sold it in 1978. And she told me a lot about my property. And I see the stone wall starting here, and I have walked, and I've taken pictures, and I have walked up Monroe Turnpike, and I have taken photographs, and the stone wall goes up the whole way. Some of it is obscured by plants and vines, but the stone walls are there. And I got this map from the clerk's office. It is map number 1187. So you could look up and prove that yourself. Now, Mr. Edwards had talked about this swale here. I reread the writing here. That's not, that there's like a retaining wall here. But that was really for them, my apologies. So he had talked about a swale. A swale is basically a ditch. The next homeowner is going to wonder what the heck that is for, and they'll probably fill it in. And my home will no longer be protected. In the subdivision regulations of the town of Monroe, yes, Attorney Russo, you are correct. There are no Connecticut state laws protecting stone walls. But the town of Monroe, and one of the many reasons I love this town, when you read the regulations, they care about wildlife, they care about our heritage. These stone walls are protected in the subdivision regulations. Page 22. I think I read it to you the last time. I put it in your package before. I won't read it again now, but there's a full paragraph protecting stone walls in the town of Monroe. Stone wall covered with a lot of brambles. Stone wall along Monroe Turnpike. Doesn't matter whether they're pretty or not. Some farmer spent a lot of effort clearing his or her land. These stone walls along Monroe Turnpike. Stone walls. Stone walls, and you probably recognized that, what do you call that? Car bumper, what do you call those things? That's just opposite Zorro Road. Stone walls. And then up by the old Beacon Church sign directing you to Old Zorro Road, stone wall that goes inland. Stone wall. Another stone wall, but this is also a view looking from the south, looking north. And you can see there's enough room to build sidewalks here. this is the big drop down by Old Sore Road. And there's even a stone wall here. Oh, here's a photograph of Downs Road and Cottage Street, stone wall. They're not tall, but they're still historical stone walls. This is the corner of my property where 1664 begins. Stone wall. Stone wall. Stone walls. I also provided you with an aerial map from 1934. I provided you not only the photograph, it's hard to see on photograph, but if you go to the link and you can tap on it and it will zoom in, and it's like, oh my gosh, I can see the stone walls. They're there, 1934. This is looking north. That's the Cottage Street, right there, along Route 111. Plenty of room for sidewalks. Plenty of room for sidewalks. Now, Mr. Edwards had taken some photographs north of Cottage Street, but it's not their responsibility to do sidewalks there. So it's irrelevant when he spoke, it's too narrow there. But I know the commission had expressed a desire that maybe in the future they'll build sidewalks all the way to Route 34. Those houses, those 8 houses, will probably have children in them, young adults. They're gonna wanna walk to the Dunkin' Donuts on Route 34, the Henny Penny. There's Waterview. I've had friends walk from my house to Waterview for a wedding reception with no sidewalk. It's dangerous. And, oh, that retaining wall, it's on its last leg. It's narrow there. And it's failing. So soon, that's going to be replaced. And you can see in this photograph, there is plenty of room to move that retaining wall back to put in sidewalks. Maybrook Railroad Company owns those railroad tracks. And you can see there is plenty of room to build a sidewalk under the railroad bridge. Thank you very much
Thank you.
for listening to me.
Thank you, Ms. Jelly. Is there anyone else here tonight that would like to address the commission? Come up. Just state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Brian Thera, 5 Sunrise Terrace. Had a few questions, some of them have been answered, but just a few things. In the last meeting, it was mentioned that, if it was to go through, it would take 9 months to complete. I just want clarification. Was that to complete the road or complete the entire thing? I wasn't sure what they were meaning by that, because in previous meetings, I think at IWC, 5 years was mentioned. So I'm just trying to get some clarification on that. I just want to, again, reiterate, concerned about the wells. I mean, is there, can we request a study be done? Like my wife said, we don't really know who to ask about it. So, I mean, it's a huge concern. Another thing, back to the stone walls, I know we've talked at length about it, but, if they were protected, what would prevent the owners of, if this did unfortunately go through, what would prevent the owners from taking down the protected walls? Who's in charge of that? What's the deal with that? And then lastly, what would happen if vernal pools were discovered? When things kicked off again, if it got to that point, what's the protocol for such an event? Are we beholden to the developer to disclose that information, or are there like site checks? There were, and you would see in the previous IWC meetings, residents who did walk the property, whether or not, they knew if that was okay or not. Basically, they did, and they saw that there were vernal pools. So, I just want to mention that. I think that's basically it. But yeah, I just, again, want to put it on record. I oppose this.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else here tonight that would like to address the commission? Please raise your hand. Is there anyone online that would like to address the commission? Please use your raise my hand button. Okay, seeing none.
Someone did have their hand up earlier, so I just want to make sure nobody wants to speak.
One more time, anyone online? Yes, John Sherman has raised.
All right, so I press the ask to unmute button, which means you have to accept and unmute yourself.
Yes, hi. This is actually Letitia Shaman, and I'm going to speak very, very quickly on behalf of myself as well as my husband, John Shaman. We own property 21 Bagburn Road, as well as 27, so 2 parcels. And I don't want to take too much time, but we actually moved here about a year and a half ago. In August of this year, it'll be 2 years. And the reason why we chose Monroe after leaving New York, we were looking for a community, we were looking for quality of life, we were looking for beautiful nature, and we purchased a home that was considered an old style farmhouse, and we loved the property. As soon as we moved in, a few changes happened rather rapidly. 2 developments by Hendrick Homes were done next to us and behind us, which we purchased 2 parcels in an effort to have space and have some privacy. They pulled decades-old trees out, which we had no idea that was going to happen when that development was happening. And again, we're not against development, but in our minds, development should be done when there's an infrastructure that's able to support it. And in this short amount of time, they also pulled out the rock walls that kind of barricaded. So we already not only purchased and spent a lot of money to kind of put roots here, but on top of that, all of these developments, we've had absolutely no peace since we've moved here. They pulled out all these trees, they pulled out the rock walls with no replacements, although there were mention of replacement trees on the plans. And from my perspective, it was very frustrating to watch not only the wildlife, but also the trees be removed with no replacements. So now, as a person who spent a lot of money to come here and invest, not only into the school system, but also the community, I find it very disconcerting that now I have to replace a lot of the areas around my property that was removed. It's very disconcerting. And I'm also disturbed by the notion of the sidewalks. Right now, who's responsible? I already have developers and contractors who are often parking not on the road, but right on top, close to the rock walls. And when recently I had to go over and say, you're not supposed to park here. And I had to get into an exchange with someone who felt that because I was from New York, I was not entitled to have a conversation about why they shouldn't be parked on the other side on the rock wall, like literally near the rock wall, after I've planted and I've tried to really change and make it nice over the rock wall. So I don't want to take too much time, but I have to say that I'm very disappointed. My husband and I have discussed putting up our properties on the market because this is not what we signed up for. And I'm hoping that the town will really think about not only approving some of these developers, but really after they're approved, checking in on them to make sure that they're doing exactly what they propose. Because often they get approvals and then it's kind of like they do whatever they want. And nobody is looking at them and watching to see if they're actually doing what's on the plans. They kind of, it's really been a nightmare. And again, I've only been here a short amount of time. I'm ready to pack up and move. It's disappointing. So I hope that you folks will take that into consideration. And honestly, my husband has attended a face-to-face meeting and we've joined via Zoom, but there's never any follow-up as to what the outcomes are and what's going to happen from the town. So we'd like to be more aware of what's going on. Quite frankly, this is the first time I hear that there's no law on the docket for rock walls. And who's responsible? We take care of ours and we're trying our best with the acreage that we have. However, if we're talking about sidewalks and all of these other things, we're not against it. What we're saying is there really should be some thought and there should be some infrastructure before we start suggesting all of these things and these changes.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Anyone else online would like to comment on this application? Once again, anybody here in person like to comment on this application? Any commissioners have any questions or comments on the application? If not, then we'll go back to the applicant.
Thank you, Chair, Commissioners. To respond to some of the comments, appreciate the comments from the neighbors. Let's get to some of them. There's a question about who to go see regarding wells. The health department would be regarding wells. That's who we submitted our information to, and that's what commented on our wells. That they would definitely be the right department to talk to about it. And the issue of water, that's why, I was talking to my client about this because again, I'm no well expert, but that's the reason why now you go down to 250 feet and the methodology they use now, which I guess fracking is to be able to access sufficient amount of water so you don't run into the issue that it seems like some people are running into. Regarding the span, that was, it wasn't, the town engineer actually was the one who said it should not be a span. I think the comment was made that the developer was actually the town engineer, did not want to span. Somebody asked about the length of the work. The 9 months, that would be for the main work is the road, but all the improvements that are associated with the subdivision. So the drainage, all the things that you see on the plans, that would take 9 months. That the houses would be separate, as they were developed. It would probably take less than 9 months, but to be conservative, my client said 9 months. Again, regarding stone walls, so in the subdivision regulations, what it says is that to put on the plans, which if you look at a survey, you can see where the stone walls are noted. And again, there are stone walls that are located on the state property, which I think is a number of the pictures that were shown. So it's outside of the bounds of our property, but there are some that are on our property that are noted on the plans. The most significant, I think, is lot 7 that you'll see on there. But again, it's in a regulated area close to the wetlands. It won't be disturbed. There's also one that I think was mentioned that's located just off of our property, off of lot 6. But what it asks in the regulations that it's feasible to try to preserve them. But again, because there's no statutory authority, which I think one of the neighbors noted, it's asking if feasible to preserve them. And luckily that stone wall is an area that we're proposing not to touch. So with that, I'll run through your standards for special exception permit, because again, for your cluster subdivision regulations, unlike the regular subdivision regulations, there's the added layer of your special exception permit standards. And if there's one thing I could say tonight, which I know might get some people excited, but if there's one thing I would say tonight, only line I would say tonight, is that the cluster subdivision regulations do not permit the commission to increase the density on a property over what is permitted under the subdivision regulations. Because I think there's a misconception about what is being asked with this application. So I just want to make that point clear. It's spelled out in your cluster subdivision reg, but again, the cluster subdivision regulations do not permit the commission to increase the density on a property like this one over what is permitted under subdivision regulations. So this isn't a situation where there is a property that can only, if we use the subdivision regulations, you can only build 2 houses on it. And we're asking to build 4 houses now on it. That is not what this is doing. What the cluster subdivision regulations are doing is they're more sophisticated in allowing the lots that would normally be allowed under subdivision regulation to be more appropriately placed on a site than they would. So basically, the subdivision regulations are sometimes like a butcher with a cleaver, whereas the cluster subdivision regulations are a little bit more, like a swordsman and just a little bit more fine point. And what I'll point out is, I'll take it straight from so cluster development shall be designed as a coordinated entity to promote the health and general welfare of the proposed community by maximizing and providing for more efficient preservation of natural open space. And so when you get to the density standard, it makes clear that the total number of single-family building lots permitted through the cluster development process shall not exceed the number which could be permitted if the land were subdivided into lots conforming to the minimum lot size and density requirements of the underlying zoning requirements. So you could get 12, going from, if you could get 12 under the subdivision regulations, the cluster subdivision regulations would allow you a max of 12 or 11, 10, 9, or what we're proposing here, 8. We are not increasing what this land would yield. So I think that's a key perspective on what's being asked of the commission. And in the purpose and intent, actually is the last line here. It says, the commission may require the applicant to adhere to the conventional development requirements if in the judgment of the commission, use of provision of the proposed open space does not provide significant benefit to the proposed community and the town of Monroe beyond that which would normally be derived from conventional development. Well, I know the first person I could call that would disagree with that statement, it would be Dr. Clements, because when we had our inland wetlands hearing, he profusely spoke on how this area that we were preserving was a very important area, particularly for that salamander and for the species and for the wetlands. So that's what's being asked of us, is to preserve an area, a very large area of open space that our experts and Dr. Clements found to be environmentally significant, and instead shifting these lots to an area that's not as environmentally significant and reducing them to a size that you felt appropriate where under your standards, where you would still provide appropriate amount of buffering. And one of your standards is that the location and size of the use, the nature and intensity of the operations, traffic involved in or conducted in connection with it, and the size of the site in relation to it, and the location of the site with respect to the type, arrangement, and capacity of streets giving access to it. And basically is that it's in harmony with the surrounding neighborhood. Well, the great thing about this particular application is that you're preserving 57.8% of the site as open space. You're reducing the size of the lots, but the lots are still bigger than any of the abutting residential lots to them. So it's not a situation where, okay, you're preserving all this open space, but then you're allowing 1 acre lots next to all 2 acre lots, and it looks completely out of context with the area. These lots will still be larger than their abutting residential. So that's why I think it's a perfect situation for a cluster subdivision. And I think the other thing, and I know I said this in the presentation earlier, while you allowed reduced lot area, you maintained essentially the same exact setbacks that you would for the RF2 zone. So this property underlying RF2. So you didn't really compromise the buffering there. You still made sure that there was sufficient buffering, even though you were allowing reduced size. And again, one of the other things I'll note is that some of these lots are well over an acre. In fact, some of them meet the minimum lot area for a cluster subdivision that would be in the RF3 zone. So some of these lots are significantly exceed your minimum standards. Next standards, the proposed use is consistent with the plan of conservation and development. Yes, again, we're providing another type of housing development while preserving in perpetuity a large area of open space for the benefit of the town and its residents. That's another huge benefit. This open space, this commission could know, you don't have to worry about this open space. It's being preserved in open space as open space in perpetuity. It will be deed restricted and it will be controlled by the town. The only person who could give it up, the only entity that could give it up would be the town, and it'd be under control forever. Next standard, that the location, nature, and height of buildings and the nature and extent of the landscaping screen on the site are such that the use will not hinder or discourage the appropriate development and use of adjacent land and buildings. Again, your standards, while allowing for the reduction of lot area, still maintain things like height and buffering to ensure that you protected surrounding areas. That the operation of the proposed use will not be objectionable for a number of reasons, but dust, vibration, glare, intensity of flashing lights. These are single-family residential. They will have no such nuisance. That safe sanitary sewage disposal will be provided. We've submitted the necessary plans to show that, and it was reviewed by the health department. That the parking areas provided will be of adequate capacity. Yes, each of these lots will have adequate parking. That the comments and recommendations of town staff and consultants, as well as other involved commissions, have been duly considered. I think now, after multiple hearings, not only with this commission but also through inland wetlands, we've addressed those comments and recommendations. The next that the proposed use will not require such additional public facilities or services greater than those uses which do not require a special exception permit. We don't create a burden on the town greater than a conventional subdivision. In fact, in this case, I would say less, because we're proposing less lots than we get on a conventional subdivision. So again, I've said it a million times, when this reg was approved, I think it's a very smart regulation that is progressive in moving beyond those kind of old draconian subdivision regulations that were just very one size fits all. And the cluster subdivision allows this great opportunity for this site where you can preserve an environmentally significant area and allow something 8 lots, which again is less than what would be allowed in a conventional subdivision, but while still maintaining a size of lot that's in character of the neighborhood. And I think we have the protections in place with this plan to make sure that we protect the neighborhood, whether it's the appropriate drilling standards for the wells, and then also all the modifications that Jason's made to the drainage plan to ensure we don't impact Ms. Jelly's property. So with that, I'm happy to answer any other questions, but respectfully request your approval of the application.
Any questions from the commissioners?
One person did pop their hand up in the middle of Attorney Russo's conversation. They've since put it down. I don't know to entertain
Want to see if they're there.
another comment. I don't believe they are on anymore.
Right. So you want to close hearing?
Yeah, and then the only other thing I'll note too is,
Did you have a question?
Yeah.
Right ahead.
Has there been any, speaking of the impact to Samantha's point, of the wells drawing from the wells up the hill? Has there been any testing done to see what aquifers they're going to pull from and if it's going to be pulling from the same water table?
I mean, that's a lot of my wheelhouse about what water table it's pulling from.
Yeah, I did some research since last meeting, and when you put wells at the bottom of a hill like that, it does pull from the houses up on top if it's pulling from the same water table and the same aquifer. So my concern is that so many residents have voiced that they're already losing water and they're already having dry wells with 150, 200-foot wells that have been drilled, not just hand dug, that there is some potential for some real concern of their wells being impacted by this.
Well, I mean, again, you know, and I was going to point this out too, I didn't say it, but my client has lived in the town for over 40 years.
48 years.
And he's built dozens of houses in the town. And the one we keep mentioning is Whitetail Drive. And he dug wells for that. There were houses that were above him there and didn't have any issue with that. And
Were they in a
so,
similar kind of neighborhood? Because I've lived here for 45 years and I've heard of well issues the entire time I've been here. So
that were caused by a subdivision.
just in general, the neighborhood's already having water issues. So
I mean, my understanding, and just talking with my client, is with the new methods that are used, particularly the fracking method that's used, when you drill down this far, is that there's been no issues. I would think if it was a serious concern that the health department would have flagged it, and they didn't make any comment to it. I don't know what else could be added beyond that.
what did the health department say, Kathleen?
The department was the first exhibit, so I think exhibit number 2, which they just state that the water will be supplied by the public well. I do also know that one of the neighbors had reached out to the health department actually directly, just talking about that. And she just, again, the director of health, Amy Lahaney, strongly encouraged private well owners to regularly test and maintain their wells in order to ensure ongoing water quality and safety. Also stated that there is setbacks that are required for sanitary septic systems that I think were also mentioned before. But there's no testing that the state requires related to existing property owners within the area.
Thank you. No other questions?
And I mean, again, that gets me back to my point of, this isn't, we're taking a property where 2 houses are allowed and going to 8. We're taking a property where under conventional subdivision, there could possibly be 12 houses. And we're locating 8 in what we think is a much better location environmentally.
I have a question. So just to put the neighbors' mind at ease, let's just say it does happen, and it does affect their well. What is their recourse? Or is it going to be totally on them to dig a new well?
Just now, Jim's explained it. There's drilling wells and then there's pounding. Okay, drilling wells never really yields sufficient amount of water. It probably, in my experience, which we put in both drilling and pounded wells, 2 gallons, 2.5 gallons, some wells are a gallon and a half. The state code is, I think, 2 gallons or 2.5 gallons to be proper well. Some drilled wells that aren't functioning right have been drilled years and years and years ago. Nowadays, they have remedies for that. And that's called, if you call a drilling company and talk to them about it, they'll come there and pull out the pump and send something down in the bottom of it and frack the rock, and you'll get water. So that's a remedy to people with drilled wells that don't have enough supply. Hand dug wells, you're at the mercy of the water table, okay? You gotta get into the ledge to get proper, well supply, through the veins in the ledge, once it's pounded or drilled and fracked, okay? So, in many of the developments I've done in this town, and I'm gonna refer to Whitetail Drive, it's surrounded by old homes with wells on Wheeler Road, Hammertown Road, up Hammertown Road, all wells, and nobody's had a problem here. Most of them, though, were drilled wells, okay? I can't promise you anything about a hand dug well because we're in the ledge. And if we're down the gradient of homes that are up there with drilled wells, it's all over town. There's no problem with that. Every different area has different veins. You could be 100 feet away from one well to the other, and they're different veins once they crack. Okay? And that's my experience with wells. To get more advice about it, contact the well company and talk to them about it. And they'll explain to you, to these young people here about it. And, they'll inform them exactly what they need to do to get a better water supply. So, but again, we've never had it impacted anybody's well. And that's why we could have went with 10 lots, but we reduced it with the new regulation. So there's only 8 lots. And we gave a lot of open space to it. And I've done that with all the subdivisions in town. There was only 10%, but how many percent is this?
It's 57.
57% of open space. We gave away lot 9 to satisfy concerns. Keep it down at 8. And that we did with the Wetland Commission. And, so that's the way I feel about the wells. Stone walls, we're not gonna touch. They're in regulated areas. The stone wall that goes along, I've walked this property. I've walked a lot of properties in Monroe in my life before a lot of things were built. And, but I walked this property many, many times. I evaluated it. And when it comes to the wetlands, we're always concerned. We try to do the proper thing and zoning regulations as well. The one thing that bothers me too is the sidewalk on Route 111. Now, I've been up and down 111 so many times like you have. In the wintertime, it's ice, cars slide off the road, trucks slide down across Route 34. It's a terrible place. And I would really not want to build a sidewalk along the highway. People are doing 60, 70 miles an hour. You got a guardrail there, and on the other side of the guardrail in this area that has to be filled in over probably 14 feet from the guardrail, it drops off tremendously. There's a stone wall 25 feet from the guardrail, and if you were to fill all that in, you're going to lose the stone wall. And it'd be so much impact to the wetlands that I fear that. I don't want to do any more impact to the wetlands with filling in 14 feet for 200 feet and losing that stone wall. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Can I just follow up? I don't think you actually answered Don's question. He wanted to know if you're going to be responsible at any part or be accountable for any damage that's done.
Well, but
Thank you for the explanation of
Yeah,
contacting
but
someone.
Commissioner, I mean, that's a tough thing because it's, I mean, multiple people have come up and testified today that they currently have problems with the well. So how would we determine that these wells were the cause of what seemed to be wells with current issues that also may be deteriorating just naturally over time? I mean, I understand their concern. I have a well myself. It's an old well. I mean, it's not a fun thing to think about. I just don't, I don't know what we could even agree to that would, I mean, how would we determine that? You know, that I think that's a really difficult thing. I think the only thing we could do is abide by the health department's best practices. And state regulations. Right.
I have a question. So does Don.
Go ahead, Dominic.
From my concern, you answered the questions and you satisfied me and on the wells and all that. But the neighbors have valid concerns. And how can we make a win-win so that they understand that this development doesn't really impact what they fear?
Well, I mean, again, the approvals are all, you know, the whole development is controlled by these approvals, both the wetlands and what this commission approves. So I know there was a concern about, well, what if somebody later on just decided to not do what they were supposed to, and that's what the swale or whether the drainage. I mean, so there will always be leverage as long as these lots exist for the town to take, or for somebody to get the town to enforce these approvals. So there's that assurance, you know, which is frankly different than a lot of, you know, properties that haven't come under approval, that, you know, you don't have that ability. But something like this, you know, these approvals, the easements, the drainage easement, the conservation easement, that all gets recorded and it makes it all enforceable if for some reason a developer, you know, doesn't follow. So I mean, that's an assurance I think that can be given. You know, and also just that this is something, again, at the wetlands level, we had our experts, we had 2 of them, but then the Wetlands Commission hired its own expert. They took that into consideration. The town engineer has looked at it. All the departments have looked at it. There's just been a lot of review of the details of this project. And so, you know, I think you know, this is, I mean, when did we start this? I mean, this has been, we've been, 2 years. Yeah, there's that. But I mean, the application process, there's just been there's been a lot of review of this development to make sure that everything's checked. And so, so that's what I would say. And again, that everything's done to current standards.
Thank you.
I just want to ask, so you had mentioned that if the property was just regularly subdivided, you could fit 12 with the wetlands and the open space you'd have to give over?
Yeah, well, yeah, because under that situation, the subdivision regulations require 15%. Trying to keep my towns in order in my head. But yeah, so it's only 15%.
But with this
cluster subdivision is 30%. So we could reduce it down to 15%.
All right, and with this specific property with the salamanders, all the land that they said you can't build on, you could put 12 houses there if you wanted to still, or no?
We could put 12, yeah, it would just, you know, that area would be included in the size of the lot. You might not necessarily build directly on that area, but that would be used towards your calculation of your lot area for the dwelling. Right, so to make the actual lot sizes. So that's what Jason submitted a plan to show that there'd be 12 building lots.
You could fit 12.
That we could fit there.
And you have that actually in your packet.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure that was stated.
The public participation period is over for this application, unless you have something brand new that we haven't heard before.
Yes, I heard something.
You still gotta come here.
This is something brand new that we haven't discussed.
Yes, my name is Paula Jelly. I live at 290 Cottage Street. When attorney Chris Russo got up to do his final summation was the first time I've heard anybody talk about fracking. Now, the only context I've heard fracking is in the oil and gas industry. And those poor people in Oklahoma who now have earthquakes when they didn't have earthquakes before. I haven't heard, fracking is dangerous to the earth. So if Attorney Russo can address why he's now bringing up fracking when digging, drilling wells, when fracking is a totally different issue from drilling or pounding a well. If he could address that, please.
Okay.
I'll just say, I think it's different between the industry. It's just, it's a term. I understand that if you hear the term, you might get scared, but it's just different industries. So it's to the practices that are permitted by the state.
Yeah, oil fracking and water fracking are completely different.
Yeah, everybody just mumbled. Can you repeat that and not mumble?
Yeah. It's different between the industries. And so it might be a term that's the same actual word, but it's different between the industries. What it is it's done to standards that are permitted by local regulations, state regulations. I have not heard of, again, I'm not an expert in the field, but I have not heard of anything similar to what you hear causes concern for oil fracking that you do for water fracking.
Well, Mike Chesnowski, fracking is one thing for oil and all that and gas, but we're not fracking when you're pounding. You're opening up the veins in a short distance around the well. That's it. They don't open up veins from all over for several hundred feet. It's just that particular spot. And when the wells are separated by 175 to 100 feet, that allows plenty of water to keep going by and go to wherever people that are down the grade from that. Just want to say that. Thank you.
I have a question about the fracking. So I just looked it up real quick. It says water fracking is using sand and chemicals. What chemicals are going to be used for the fracking?
I don't know about using any chemicals for fracking. I mean, they have to contact their own driller if they want it to, I think they put dynamite down there and they, crack it a little bit.
Well, I'm asking what you're going to do.
No,
We're going to do it to whatever the standards that are allowed. And there's safety standards that are in place with regards to these things that I don't think it's Wild Westish out there where people are, just blasting holes that, are endangering people's surrounding properties. And so, I think, any well that's drilled on our property will abide by all safety protocols that are required by the state.
I'd still like to know what you're going to be using. Yeah.
I mean, what did you say? He wants to know what we're using for the wells, for the fracking.
Well, we're not fracking, we're drilling, we're pounding, okay? They open up the veins around the well itself. And you go down 200 feet, 250 feet is the average with pounding. Drilling, they may go down even more, 300 feet, 400 feet. I've heard about that. So,
right, but
there's actually no really fracking. If you gotta talk to drillers, because I don't have wells drilled. I have them pounding. and that opens the veins. Drilling, I had a house in Vermont. We had some problems with the well. They come in, they put something in the well real deep and it opened up the veins. That was my.
You're going to be doing pounding, not fracking. Is
That's
that correct? Thank you.
That's correct.
So
That word should not have been brought up.
He was informing what they could do to fix their wells was to go down and do fracking.
Public participation is over.
No,
This hearing.
no.
We also have one person online with their hand up. I'm just stating that
They had their hand up.
they just put their hand up during all this discourse.
Okay.
Fracking again more.
Okay, Mr. Russo, would you like to?
Well, no, I think that's it, yeah. Respectfully request approval of this application and appreciate everyone's time and comments on it.
Okay. Any questions from the commissioners?
I have no more questions.
No more questions? All right, then this hearing is closed. Thank you for attending. Second hearing tonight is EFP 2023-04-A1, file number 115, 64 Cambridge Drive and 4 Independence Drive. This application is going to be continued. The public hearing will open on 5/15/25.
It's not really being continued then, right?
It is, we're not opening it tonight, so we're continuing it to the next meeting.
Okay, but there's nothing for me to read to.
There's nothing for you to read tonight. We're not going to open it tonight. We have, this application has an intervener, so we have noticed the intervener personally, as well as had it on the agenda several days in advance so people could see it, and we are announcing it to hear tonight. So we're not hearing the public or the intervener or the applicant tonight. We will open the public hearing. They'll give their full presentation on May 15th.
Thank you. Site development plans, the sub SUP 2025-01, file numbers 1278, 1536, and 1564 Monroe Turnpike were heard in conjunction with the SEP that we've just closed.
Yes, but we are going to move both items to deliberation because we are going to have two votes. We would have a vote on the special exception permit, and then if it passes, then we would have a subsequent vote on the cluster development.
Right. So next, we're going to go into deliberations. We will now deliberate on SCP 2025, the special exemption permit that we just heard, as well as SUB 2025, this cluster subdivision development. We have the regular 5 members and Nicole involved in the deliberations.
You do have draft approvals for both in front of you tonight. I would just like to point out a couple things on the draft approvals. There are a couple conditions. So when we talk about conditions, one of the reasons why this commission had chose to write the regulations for a subdivision application and a special exception permit is because a subdivision application, you legally can't have conditions. We use that word conditions, but when we talk about the legality of it, it's actually modifications. So you can request a modification to a subdivision application such as adherence to the town engineer's comments related to, a stormwater system, something that brings it into compliance or brings it into compliance with the regulations. We have the special exception permit in case there was any other additional conditions to the approval that was outside of those modifications that this commission wanted to put onto the application. I don't believe we have any here, but I just wanted to make sure the commission knows that that is an option to them. So the conditions of the approval would be just conveyance of open space to the town of Monroe prior to the recording of the map, which is part of our regulations. All lots shall require an engineered site plan to be reviewed and approved by the health department, zoning enforcement officer, and town engineer prior to the issuance of a building permit. So we're permitting the lot. The lot is being shown in construction in a conceptual manner. Everybody's done a preliminary review that we believe they are buildable lots. However, they will have to come in with all the final health department testing for the well and the septic, as well as stormwater design management, which you guys are basically approving it for the road, but if square footage and things like that, they would have to have it for the individual house, as well as secondary zoning enforcement review for setbacks because the footprint of the house could change. We do allow for modifications like that. The proposed right-of-way and lot shall be monumented as per the Town of Monroe subdivision regulations prior to the issuance of the certificate of occupancy, which is part of our regulations. Prior to the Town of Monroe accepting the road and as-built depicting conformance shall be submitted and approved by the town engineer. Prior to recording the subdivision on the land records, a formal engineered septic plan must be conducted and approved by the Monroe Health Department. Obtain any CTDOT approvals prior to work within the right-of-way. So before they can disturb anything within the right-of-way, they have to get approval by the Connecticut Department of Transportation. The applicant shall revise the plans to conform with section 11302E. And there's a secondary one, that 11302Q. So they originally had asked for 3 waivers. They had asked for the road to be reduced from 32 to 28. They had asked for a waiver for the shelf around the culvert, and then they had asked for a waiver for the pipe material to go from reinforced concrete pipe to HDPE. The last 2 were not supported by the town engineer. The applicant has already made some changes on the drawings. We're still putting those as conditions of approval because we just got those plans yesterday. And I want to make sure he has a time to really do a thorough review, but the applicant was amenable to those. And then adherence to the town engineer's comment letter dated 5/1/2025. He issued out his memo today, again, based on the information that he received yesterday. There's a couple minor comments. I think he had some questions about concerns about one of the radii that he wanted to change, but it was all really minor, and he gave me assurance that that could be a condition of approval. And the posting of a bond in the amount of $621,000, 715. So this isn't a soil and erosion control bond. This is a bonding for the road, which is why it's so much, because it will be a town accepted road at the end of the application, and we bond it in order to make sure that if anything were to happen during the construction, the project would be abandoned. We would have enough money to complete the road in order for it to be there. So this commission is approving as it currently is written right now in both of these, the granting of the 1 waiver, also the acknowledgement that no sidewalks are being proposed. That's how this is written right now, and that's something that can be discussed, as well as the legal instruments that will be required, which is the warranty deed for the conveyance of the open space. They're deeding that to the town, the conservation easement, which staff has seen, and they have made, and so has the Inland Wetland Commission, and they've made accommodations for the fire pond and the stormwater drainage and access easement, which they have given us a draft. And the biggest thing we wanted to make sure we understood from that was that the town is not responsible for updating the stormwater management practices. Those will be on the responsibility of the individual homeowners. And that has been vetted by staff. However, the final language of that is subject to review by the town attorney. Any questions for me?
Are we going to deliberate on both of the?
I think you can deliberate them together because they cross over. The only real difference is you're granting the waivers as part of the subdivision approval. You're not actually granting them as part of the special exception permit. But if you had any additional conditions you wanted to add outside of a modification, we could put that in the subdivision
We'll
approval.
vote on them
In the special exception.
after the deliberations. All right, so any thoughts from the commissioners? Sorry?
Guess we have to discuss sidewalks, or what are our thoughts on sidewalks?
Well, I don't really think we should be filling in a significant amount of wetlands to put the sidewalk in my opinion. 3,800 cubic feet.
Is that amount southbound or
I
northbound?
think we're only talking about going northbound.
Okay.
We weren't considering south. Right as you come out of the proposed driveway or road, there's quite a deep trench there. So in my opinion, I don't think we should require sidewalks. Anyone else?
I'm just torn because we make everybody else do it.
Well, I was torn too until I listened to all the facts on both sides. I mean, I agree, we do.
We make everyone else. Most. And that whole highway thing, I mean, they got sidewalks on the side of the Merritt Parkway, for God's sakes, people going 80 miles an hour, so that doesn't make any sense to me. They gotta change that guardrail too, so while you're modifying the guardrail, you could always modify around it too.
Anyone else want to chime in on the sidewalk issue?
Yeah, I mean, I would lean towards wanting the sidewalks, mainly just because of, like Bruno said, it's kind of what we've required everyone else on 111 to do. And, you know, if it turns out with DOT and looking, we can build sidewalks here and here, but not here, then.
Well, if it's a DOT, right, if DOT says no, then it's no. I mean, who are we to say no, DOT, you know?
Because it would be, there are places, right, where you have the sidewalk and then, all right, it can't be built here, and then it crosses, or it's on the other side.
Listen, I'm an expert in very few things. And when experts tell me, you know, their facts and what they get paid to do, I mean, I listen to them. I agree with you guys. You know, so if DOT were to say, no, not here, but you could do it here, I don't know. I just have a hard time telling everybody else you have to do it and then someone no.
Are you comparing this to other developments that were commercial?
I'm comparing it to every project we approve.
On specifically
on main roads.
On 111, 25, or on the state highways,
we've said they had to
always, as far as I can remember. I can't remember a project where we said.
And this one specifically to me has more of a risk and safety of not putting them in than some of the other ones.
Again, do you want to encourage people to be walking down there when
walk
it's
now.
going to end?
They walk now.
And, right, but it's going to end in the area that we're talking about, bring sidewalks in, it's not particularly hazardous, however.
For now, it'll end until the next property gets developed.
If you don't start
Require
them
for them, and then eventually you get, like Leanne says, who's not here, eventually they go somewhere. And I
Where
just.
will it end? If we require sidewalks on this particular.
Front of Miss Jelly's house, I believe.
Cottage Street.
No, it's
Cottage and
between
111.
Cottage Street and the driveway is what was originally discussed. Believe, 290, believe her property on 290 Cottage and.
Well, it would just have to be in front of their property. They're not going in front of someone else's property.
Correct.
Yes, just like we
Not
do.
in front of their property. There's a large span of CTDOT land and then the sidewalk. So it's not actually adjacent to their property.
Now, what about the question of running the sidewalk under the railroad track? Is that, can that be done?
The truth is
Setbacks, aren't there?
but even just from a legality of you guys requiring a sidewalk associated with a subdivision, not within the subdivision. I think the legality of that is actually a little gray. So then to try to even like go beyond that.
Well, I mean, the question would then beg, we're trying to get people safely down to the bottom of the hill to get them to these stores. If there can't be a sidewalk put into that railroad system, under that railroad pass, it's never going to go there. It's the sidewalk is now, I know that we have no authority over what's going to happen in the future in that particular area, but if it can never be put there, then the argument has been, determined that it's not going to lead to the stores that we're intending it to go to.
It's outside the town's jurisdiction, so we wouldn't be able to give you a good opinion on whether.
There's a whole nother development that could be done past the railroad tracks, no?
Again.
These would die at some point anyway. Just like every other one that started. They eventually died somewhere and then someone else took them over.
I believe the engineer said there are setbacks, that the sidewalk has to be X amount of feet away from the road. There really isn't any room under the trellis for any, the sidewalk would have to be right on top of the road, contiguous with the road. I believe that was their engineer that stated that. So I don't really foresee it going any further than I mean, that retaining wall could be moved back, but I don't think getting around that railroad trestles would be way.
And even the small section we're talking about, they did make some arguments about feasibility, and this commission can't take that into consideration of, whether something can actually even be built.
I think back to when Crown View was built, there's not sidewalks that are leading to Crown View but.
And it's a street, now I think about it, as opposed to a business on 111.
That's what I'm saying.
It's a street that's gonna go back to the town. So that is where it is different. We don't have streets coming out to 111 where they've been new streets that we've said sidewalk at the corner of those streets. So I guess that would be the precedence not to have sidewalks.
The only thing actually going on 34 is a street.
Yeah. Not 111.
Not 111, right?
Yeah, inside the subdivision, obviously. Yeah, it's a cul-de-sac, so.
Yeah, no, I grew up on cul-de-sac, you don't need sidewalks.
Right, yeah, right.
I think it's unnecessary. That's my thought.
Other than sidewalks, what other issues were we talking about here?
Well, I mean, I felt like the applicant met, many of the abutters' concerns and in many ways went over and above. There was certainly more meat on the bone, if you will, if he wanted to turn this into a project where he was extracting as much as he possibly could have out of it. And, the 57% is nice.
It's a lot.
It's a lot, and the 8 houses is not, not getting greedy with the space that's there. He has a good track record in town, and I know that the systems with the wells, although I'm no expert either, these systems that are installed, modern systems with variable speed pumps and everything else are much more efficient and reliable than the old systems.
Everything gets better in time, right? The septic systems are better.
Well, they're held to a standard.
Sure.
But I guess the concern is that the rest of the wells there aren't those new wells. So what damage could there potentially be?
I don't think any of us can answer that.
No, I mean, really, I know when Dominic asked his question, the answer is no, there's nothing that can be done if the wells get damaged from this, if you could even prove that it was from this.
I would have been more comfortable if there had been some testing there, which is possible, to see what water tables are being drawn from, what aquifers are being drawn from. That is something that can be done. So that would have made me more comfortable knowing we weren't impacting the residents who are our most important person to take care of while promoting business. I promote development too, but it also is our job to make sure we're not impacting the neighborhood as well.
I don't think that's something we can add to this application.
No, but I'm just saying, I do have concerns about that.
I do like the fact though that they're 100 feet apart from each other. That's a lot if you think about it.
From each other is not my issue. My issue is people on top of the hill.
No,
Yeah.
I totally.
I'm
What you're,
confident,
no, what you're saying is 100%. But we're also thinking
Yeah.
they're also 100 feet away.
Yeah.
And it's not like they're all in one spot, right? And they're all drawing from the, maybe one does. Well, how do we know, right?
No.
You could be right.
No,
Well,
yeah.
maybe one does, maybe two do, but.
And water's kind of come into question and discussion here because at the last meeting, not the lack of water, but the fear of water coming onto the property, because historically there's been issues with flooding there very
In
recently.
that area, right?
Yeah.
And the response was, well, putting in this pavement and this drainage is going to actually prevent the water from coming onto the property. But then, does that prevent the water from getting to the wells?
That's surface water.
Getting surface water.
That's surface water. That's not.
What is a 25-foot hand dug well, surface water?
Water table water.
That's water table, correct.
It's only 25 feet.
Yeah,
If you're doing drainage around the house, you're not digging 100 feet around. You're putting it, you're trying to eliminate that surface water. So you go down 5 feet, 6 feet, 10 feet.
And it's so hard to tell. My neighbors well yields 5-6 gallons per minute. Mine is 2.5. They're both within standard and they're both a couple hundred feet apart. It's so difficult to know how the veins are working under the ground. That's why some wells only have to get pounded 200 feet and some go 600 feet because they've got to make sure that they create the yield necessary.
And from what I understand, I could be wrong, but when you drill, why they choose pounding is when you drill, you kind of like solidify the sides of it.
Compressing it.
You know, and it's harder for water to come in. If you pound it, it kind of, that's from what I understand. I don't, again, far from
It
the
cracks the rock.
Correct.
Right.
I'm right? Thanks, Tom. I'm right about something. Yeah, I mean, it's.
And I think the reason why that these types of studies aren't required is because of the standards that are put in place. That has to create a certain yield. And when it does, there's really no way to determine something that's a half a mile away. It's working on a whole different set of veins. Are they interconnected somehow? Hard to say.
Yeah. It'd be hard to.
They're not gonna know until they actually, if they get approved, start doing the testing. Or digging the wells.
On the neighbor's property, they're not going to know at all.
Yeah, until it gets done.
So they're all complete, right?
Yeah.
But this exact argument could be said and made for any development, no matter where you go.
Depending on the topography, yeah.
So if you're on a flat parcel, we don't have to study it.
Well, no, but you're not pulling the water down from the top.
You're not pulling it down from the top when you're talking about veins either. You're talking about service.
That's right. That's water getting.
Oh, I know, I've researched online since the last meeting to look further into it about the impact of putting wells at the bottom. So,
Right.
that's my concerns.
No, they're very valid. Of course they're valid. You know, hope they're not on the same band, like, you know. But I don't know how, as a builder, you're gonna figure that out either.
You follow the standards put forth.
I mean, that's the reality, unfortunately. I'm good.
Any other concerns you want to discuss before we go to a motion? No? All right, well, the chair will entertain a motion. We'll start with we'll start with the, where are we going to start with?
Special exception permit.
Special exception permit. And then we'll do the subdivision second.
I'll make a motion to approve SEP 2025-01 file 1665.
As drafted as per the draft approval.
As drafted.
I have a motion from Westland. Need a second. Second, anyone? I'll second the motion. Any further, that's O'Reilly seconding. Any further discussion? If not, we'll call the roll starting on my left.
No, Lupo, no.
Westland, yes.
Mayini, no.
O'Reilly, yes.
Condon, no.
Okay, the SCP 2025-01 fails. Vote of 3-2. Next.
This commission can, so when you have a vote, that's an approval. And the approval fails, it's an automatic denial. However, you can amend the motion, which would be to change the draft approval to add additional conditions or changes, and you could vote on it again if you so choose. So if the sticking point was sidewalks and you wanted to add the requirement of sidewalks into the approval, you could revote on it tonight if you chose.
Do we want to amend the motion? The motion. Anybody want to amend?
Amend your
the
motion.
Motion?
I don't see a downside to it.
So do we accept amendments at this point?
Yes, so we would,
Anyone want to propose an amendment?
I kind of have to tell you how to amend it. So the mention of sidewalks is really in the subdivision approval. But we can add language into the special exception permit as well, just to make it clear, because that is what you guys are voting on.
Well, is there anyone that would change that vote if sidewalks were included?
That's a good question, if you want to take a straw poll. Okay, let's not go through the exercise. If you want to do a straw poll to make sure.
Oh, forget the sidewalk.
Worth
Not
it?
going to change the vote. I don't believe.
It would help me.
Oh, it would change the vote then.
No, I'm not saying it would change my vote. It would help me, I said.
Okay, it might change the vote. So then how would we go about doing that?
We would have to amend it like right now, like we need to figure out language, we need to take the time to figure out, and we would motion it with the approval as drafted with the following changes, and then we would list the changes that would.
Why don't you ask?
All right, so what do we think about?
You can ask them what they're.
Bruno, what do you think? You would like a sidewalk from the beginning of the driveway?
I didn't say sidewalks was my only thing. I'm just.
No, I'm just, let's do one thing at a
As an
time.
option.
Right.
We do one thing at a time.
Right. Listen, I'm a proponent of sidewalks in the story. I mean, I've never voted on a project and told them not to do it. I'm also, I have other concerns. I don't know, it's the topography's rough, I feel. Not that I'm some sort of builder.
Yeah, I don't know if it's appropriate to do a full deliberation since we've already
Why?
deliberated it.
Yes.
Well, if you want to talk about an amendment, then we'll start with.
Yeah, I think we would need a
Right.
motion on the table and a second, and then we can discuss the motion.
Well, the chair will entertain an amendment to the motion.
I make a motion to amend SCP 2025-01 file 1665 as drafted.
Motion by Mayini for an amendment.
To include, let's just say sidewalks.
Okay, let's say sidewalks.
I need a second.
Second.
All right, I have a second. Westland. Discussion. Let's look at the map and see where we would like to have the sidewalks begin and end. We'll have to determine that.
Sorry, who was that second?
Ron. L2. It's pretty much where the Sun Valley Drive is out. Are we talking about just north?
I believe so.
Or north and south?
Well, I was gonna say, why would it be just north?
I don't know.
On either side of the road?
Nowhere with the north one, might as well go nowhere with the south one.
You're at this, you mean across the road?
No. Just going down the bound or.
Same side of the road.
I think we had talked from Cottage Street to the driveway. That was where we had talked about sidewalks.
Why would you go north? North
Just
is
a
all homes.
question,
North is all homes.
just south.
South.
Just south, I was talking
Okay,
south.
south, yeah.
Right, starting at,
Because if you go north this way, those are homes.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, when we had talked about sidewalks, when it was analyzed, it was only between the proposed driveway and Cottage Street.
okay, so then we have that section there.
I don't think it was even analyzed the other direction, south of the driveway, as now you have more wetlands, more, yeah.
All right, so the modification would then read from a sidewalk from the entrance of Sun Valley Drive to the beginning of Cottage Street,
Yes.
whatever that distance is. Anything else on the amendment?
The subdivision, the subdivision amendment would remove the language related to no sidewalks being proposed and, a condition of approval would be added to both of these that,
Can we require sidewalks in our regulations, or can we just suggest and request sidewalks?
we can require it, but let's bring up the language because that was one of the points by the attorney. And that is why I had said, earlier that it's the language is gray. And I think even some of the case law is gray, as you definitely within your right have the availability to request sidewalks on, within the subdivision, so like along the road. The commission may require the installation of Portland cement sidewalks in locations deemed appropriate by the commission. Sidewalks when required shall be constructed in accordance with the standard specifications.
And we can.
But you are asking for sidewalks outside of the subdivision along a DOT right away. So there's some sort of interpretation as to if deemed proper by the commission includes that lane there.
So gray then.
Little gray. I think the applicant made the argument, well, I know they did the study as well, but, typically it's right in front of somebody's property, whereas this is requiring an applicant, because they can't walk through the back of the property because of the grade, they have to walk down the driveway and around and over and around to get to the sidewalk that is not adjacent to their property. It's also has a buffer of DOT land, between that for them to actually access it from the back of their property. They're actually trespassing onto DOT. It's right of way, but they're, have to.
No, Kathleen, that actually makes great sense.
Right, and I think the homeowners of those two homes right there would be required to
They're
maintain
required.
it.
Correct.
Which makes it even worse.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would withdraw the amendment for the sidewalks.
All right, let's discuss any other amendments that might get this passed. Approved. Any suggestions? Nicole?
Yeah, I'm just too concerned about the water on the property.
Yeah, that's still my major one is the water.
Yeah.
All right, then the motion for approval fails.
All right, so we move on. Which were we doing? Plus, we're doing SCP. Vote for SCP.
That was the SCP.
That was the SCP, so, I guess let's do the subdivision for good nature, but you can't actually approve the subdivision without a special exception permit. The code requires that you have both.
You wanted them voted on separately, so then let's vote on one separately. Right.
You could vote for a denial for the subdivision and state your reasons for the denial.
Yeah, that's.
Although I don't have a denial drafted, because I was directed to draft an approval.
Then why don't we just make a motion to approve it and then vote it down? So
We got to vote no.
they are. It'll be 3-2 again. So motion to approve cluster subdivision.
As
I
drafted.
mean, that's not a fair statement.
Go ahead.
I don't think we can actually approve it.
You don't have a.
Vote on it then?
Just a,
Could
This
it,
is our first time doing cluster development, so I actually haven't yet.
We need to vote on it.
I think we need to vote on it, so
Feel like
we have something in writing, so if there is an appeal, they have something to appeal.
All right, so then,
I don't mind this part.
Chair will entertain a motion
I don't mind this part.
to entertain the cluster development subdivision approval.
Well, hold on a second. I'm a little torn here. A little torn because the cluster subdivision, I don't. That part I'm actually okay with.
Well, no, you can't, you can't,
Well, then what modification would you be okay?
because the
with?
cluster
Yes,
subdivision is where we say no sidewalks, it's where we do that.
Right.
You can't do one without the other, we can't,
Okay.
you can't approve the subdivision and not approve the special exception permit, you have to vote.
That made it easy for me then. Okay.
And your reasonings for denying the special exception permit would be the same reasons for denying the cluster subdivision.
All right, we need a motion.
Make a motion to approve SUB 2025-01, file 1278.
Motion by Westland, second by O'Reilly. Call the roll, starting on my left.
Lupo, no.
Westland, yes.
Mayini, no.
O'Reilly, yes.
Condon, no.
And the motion fails. The
Right, thank you.
application is denied. Thank you, everyone. Moving on. We have meeting minutes from 4/17/25. Everyone seen the minutes?
Yes, sir.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from 4/17/25 as drafted.
Motion by
Second.
Condon, second by Mayini. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Abstaining? Okay, the motion passes. Minutes are approved. Planning and zoning matters. We have correspondence.
We have two correspondents from the town of Newtown. They are doing two separate text amendments. Temporary accessory use requiring special exception permit, and to create a zoning district to modify the senior living housing. It's not, they have to notify us when they do something that affects the entire town, that could affect property within 500 feet of the town of Monroe. So that is an individual property or usually text amendments for the entirety of the town. Staff has taken a brief review of what's there, and we don't have any questions or concerns for it.
Okay. Both of them?
Yep.
Commissioner reports. I don't have nothing to report. Any of the other commissioners have anything?
No, sir.
And do staff reports.
I issued a memo. It should be at the very, very bottom of your packets. Just a brief review of what the planning and zoning department has been doing for the month of April. We have not issued a lot of commercial permits. We've been working with a lot of people for a lot of commercial permits. But we have not actually issued them this month. We have been very busy with residential permits, lots of decks. Single-family dwellings, covered porches, things of that nature. Still, spring has sprung and people are outside. They're seeing what's there. 1271 Monroe Turnpike, which is Legacy Lane, continues to be built. They are moving and grooving. They continue to get permits and certificate of occupancies. We've had a couple home occupation permits that we've been working with our residents on. And then we've been dealing with a tremendous amount of wetlands and zoning violations, as again, people are outside and they're looking at their neighbors. And they're looking at what's going on and they're doing work and taking down trees sometimes that they shouldn't be taking down within wetlands. And we have a very on top of this staff that is managing all of that. So we're very thankful for them being out in the field, taking down signs that they see that are illegal, and then also dealing with the violations. Violations are a tremendous amount of research and a tremendous amount of work and a tremendous amount of conversations, and they both our enforcement officers do it so elegantly. So we're very appreciative for that. The other item I have is if this the members that also sit on the Planning and Zoning Commission subcommittee remember 1603 Monroe Turnpike, which is the Mondo property that came to subcommittee, is proposing to come in for a special design district and a special exception permit. And one of the comments made at that meeting was that the commission wanted the opportunity to do a site visit. I think I'm not quite sure where we landed on whether you wanted to do the site visit before they came in for the application, or you wanted them to put the application in and then we would do a site visit. So they said they're a month or two out from putting the application in, but they are open to the commission. If you wanted to do a pre-application, they would grant you authority to access the site, and that we could schedule a site walk now if this commission had wanted to kind of get your head around the site before the application came in. So it is at your discretion, and if you would like me to schedule a site walk, I am happy to do so.
I'd like to do it before the application, so
Okay.
you can
Get a little before action.
Yeah.
input in.
I will coordinate that with them unless for some reason we want to pick a time or a date now.
I don't care about the date as long as it's like in the afternoon, like
Yeah.
4 or 5, 6-ish, something like that. Make it easier for everyone to get when they're out of work and.
Okay. So how about this? I'll send an email if you guys are fine with email correspondence. I'll put together a couple dates, coordinate it with them, and then we can go that direction.
Perfect.
Thank you. That is all I have.
Okay. Chair will entertain a motion to.
Motion to adjourn.
To adjourn by Unites and Condon. We are adjourned 9:25 PM.